Good evening. Lingering like 3-week-old baby sick on a very warm couch. It's American Scouser TV, EPL panel show, possibly the greatest show in the American Scouser TV universe after the Thursday Night podcast, but that's only because we harp on Darwin Núñez and our computers break down every week. So we're joined by Shay and Alex and Glenn, and in the moment, hopefully, by Alan, but his signal is stumbling like Arsenal are these days. But, Shay, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Not too bad, Glenn. I'm sure you're happy right now.
I am. I wish we'd done the live watch along for this game, Macca. You got to see the real Brentford. It was great.
Yeah, I got to see the real Brentford, and that was the real Brentford. It was a good one. And Alex, how are you? It's been a while.
Yeah, good. I'm still not convinced Brentford are real, but if you say so.
And just for Glenn's sake, tonight we are sponsored by McCoy's Flame Grilled Steak. Just thought we'd have something special for you this week. But let us look at what we are going to talk about tonight. We'll look at the games gone by, and including a little bit about the League Cup semi-final first leg between Newcastle and Spurs today. And we'll talk about Graham Potter and being linked to Everton and West Ham, and a bit about West Ham and the whole idea of looking for the manager while the current manager is still running training sessions. It's a bit bizarre. And then it says there the weekend ahead, but Macca completely forgot the FA Cup was on. So we look at the next Premier League games and maybe talk a little bit about the FA Cup, the games that our own teams are involved in, instead of the whole thing. But let us get started on the games for the weekend. And we'll go to each of you on your individual games. Shay, we'll start with you. Aston Villa against Leicester City. Now, for how well you guys did last year, you're doing the same thing that every team that has their first season in European competition, especially with the league formats, finds, is just getting that rotation right and knowing who to play when. Not doing terribly, not so far behind that you're having an awful season, but a bit of a stumbling period for a few weeks. But Leicester City looking to get that Ruud van Nistelrooy revolution going, and it's staying in place like me on a bike. In other words, going nowhere. But talk us through that game, because it seemed like Leicester City's backs were up, and it wasn't it wasn't an easy game. It seemed, but you have the firepower, which is always a great thing to have, and firepower that the papers are now saying maybe taken from you by good old Barcelona, who like to spoil everybody's progress when they fancy a player. But talk us through that game against Leicester City.
For sure. Like I said, it was, how I've said, in previous shows, I think the Champions League is catching up. The team is definitely getting gassed. And I know Arsenal fans can attest to it. Emery will stick by his same squad. The rotation is very tough for him. And then injuries are starting to creep up. Like I said, I think McGinn lasted not even 20 minutes this match, pulled a hamstring, so he's done probably for the next 3 or 4 weeks. I think Pau Torres broke his foot, so he's done for 2 or 3 weeks. So this is going to be interesting to see what they do in January, what players are going to bring in. We always had that wonderful financial fair play always in our ear. So I already saw that they're getting ready to get rid of Jadon Philogene. And like I said with Barcelona, they're over here inquiring about Johan Duran, but they can't even register Mr. Danny Olmo. I don't know where they're going to get the money to fund these supposed transfers. But it was a good win. It was a little timid there just because we scored and just kind of were faltering around. Leicester were hanging around there. We've talked about it a bunch in the show as well. Jamie Vardy is always just, you don't know what's going to happen with him. He's somehow still able to do this at 38 or however old he is. I don't know how he's still be able to run and still elite. And then when Ross Barkley came in, he's been hit or miss this season as well. Hopefully trying to recapture that Ipswich form, but not Ipswich. I forgot. Luton Town. He came in and scored that really good goal, so it was nice to see. Hopefully we just keep the momentum up. And like I said, we definitely need some new legs. I don't know what they're going to do this transfer window. It's very, very interesting. I know we were I don't know if you saw, but I guess we were looking at Donnell Mainland, or however you say his name, from Borussia Dortmund. So we'll see what happens.
I have to say, I've been drinking Red Bull like it's going out of fashion, and no professional clubs in England have offered me a contract at all. So it's,
I think it's the Red Bull and the wine. I think that's his.
oh yeah, that's where I'm probably going on because I don't drink. Now, Glenn and Alex, we talked about before about the ambitions of both of your clubs, especially Fulham doing so well, and not surprising us because we talked about Fulham last year, I think, or like really early on in the season that there's a lot of good stuff happening at that club, and Brentford, of course, we know my man crush on Thomas Frank. He's a beautiful man. What a hairstyle. Almost as good as Szoboszlai's. But to see Aston Villa, have that little stumble in form with the European competition, does that worry you, lads, that if you get into any of the European places, whether it's the Europa League or the conference, that, that's something your clubs will have to deal with and figure that out, even though so many clubs have seen it happen and nobody ever seems to. We'll start with Alex because Fulham, I think, are closest to getting in that situation.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's such a thing as being a little ahead of schedule. And it's one of those questions that I think if you ask Shea at the end of last season, would you rather Villa not make it and be in a better position for the league this year, or make it and figure it out as they go? I can guarantee you he'd say, like, screw it, let's make the Champions League and then figure it out. I think a blessing for Fulham and Brentford they're in that same boat is Fulham are not going to make the Champions League. And so the Conference League and maybe even the Europa are significantly less taxing on a squad like Fulham than being in the Champions League week in, week out would be. So I think that is a saving grace, is that you end up in the Conference League, and instead of going to Barcelona and Dortmund and Leipzig, you're going to I don't even know some of the team names. You're going to some far-flung Eastern European outposts.
Or Shamrock Rovers.
Or Shamrock Rovers, yeah. Which is how Chelsea's playing. Then maybe Fulham get a win there. But it's less it is less taxing, especially, again, as you're trying to build up that squad. I think that is every club in that first season of Europe, after a long time of being out of Europe, you see this kind of thing happen. And the hope that it doesn't set the progress back further. The hope is that you don't crash out of Europe early and finish 10th and out of Europe again, and now you're starting over. So, if you ask me right now, if I wanted Fulham to make Europe and then figure it out next year, I'd take it in a heartbeat. I'd bite your hand off.
That's a good point for you, Glenn. That is an ambition for Brentford, really. That should be the ambition for Brentford, shouldn't it? To be developing just like Fulham did, just like Brighton have done, in an organic way, to where you have that headache, to where you're, as a fan complaining, well, why did he play this player? We had this big game in the league this week, and why did he play that player in the league? We had a big European game. That's a great headache to have, as much as we all complain as supporters, isn't it? And if you're a club with ambitions like Brentford and Fulham, and are trying to do things in a very, let's say, not resource heavy, but in like ingenuity heavy way, that you want to be there, don't you? That's the argument you want to have with your fellow supporters next year all the time, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, I agree with Alex. Like, if you're offered the chance to play at the highest level you can, whatever tier of Europe that would be, we'd obviously take it. And as Alex rightly pointed out, it's not like we're going to be debating the Champions League for either club as well as we play at times. But we've already seen this tension this season, right, Macca, with Brentford domestically. We've got a threadbare squad at the minute. We've got the injuries I talk about most weeks, and we had to make this similar decision with the League Cup when we played Newcastle away a week or 2 weeks ago or so. And there was this debate and argument among Brentford fans, like, do you put out your full team? Do you try and get to the semi-final? But that would be 2 legs, so that could be another 3 games. Or do you kind of try and rotate and appreciate that it's a difficult fixture and we're probably not going to win it, and give a few players a rest? And we kind of did the worst of both worlds, which was we played a couple of players, we picked up some injuries, we got swept away. We didn't really approach the game in a manner that made any fan, when we saw the lineup, think we could win it. So it was interesting to see those kind of discussions that you might need to have in the Conference League or Europa League kind of play out in England just over the last few weeks. And what was clear is we would need a bigger squad, right? We'd need a squad with more depth, with more quality from the subs. We've been really unlucky with injuries, almost more so than many other teams. And it kind of infuriates me when a lot of the bigger teams complain about their injury list. When you look at when Mark Flecken was potentially injured the week before, a week ago, we could have put out a full strength Premier League 11 from the injury list. So those discussions and those issues would probably pile up even more if you have another tournament. So yeah, it's tricky. I can't imagine this season we're going to be pushing for Europe really, but what I would like to think is if some of the younger players who we've invested in, like Kevin Schade, Van den Berg, would be nice to see some more of Carvalho. If they continue to develop, Yarmouk, who's come from our B team, who's been fantastic in midfield, if they can continue their growth with us this season and we can finish in the top half, well, maybe these are good conversations to have, this time next season. And, the way in which we brushed aside Southampton this week just gone, that showed that we can really bring our A game. And I'd love to see us play that style of football in Europe.
Yeah.
How about Darwin Núñez? He can help you.
We might be all right. I think we'll be good.
I think he can help your depth just because he's tall and he can get into this. Alan's back.
I hope so.
There he is.
There he is.
With brand new setup and everything. And
it's just like the Arsenal team.
How they go against United. Oh, that's right. You guys drew to United. You drew to United. Oh, okay.
They're flying thin and slow here tonight at the EPL show the jokes.
Hot.
So let's go to the Fulham one, the Fulham game, Alex. Because Ipswich have been the whipping boys for so long this season, and they seem to be pulling a little bit together. The ideas that McKenna wants, maybe the players are starting to gel, or maybe the fitness is finally coming into them. I don't know what kind of plans, whether he's a traditionalist in terms of getting players fit from the start of the season, or whether he periodizes it so they're fit in the second half. I've no knowledge of that, but Ipswich are becoming a little bit of a dangerous team to face, and I think that's pretty much what Fulham found out, isn't it?
Yeah, and that you would hope as a Fulham fan that they would have found that out the last time Fulham drew to Ipswich this year, and we didn't. I think the similar issues that we've seen all year were kind of laid to bear. Is that Fulham sometimes they struggle to create, sometimes they struggle to finish chances. This weekend was a little bit of both. And the 2 goals were penalties and well taken, and Raul deserves credit, but didn't really create a whole bunch. The same problem with set pieces, not creating a whole bunch. To be fair to Ipswich, Delap is a stud, and they're going to sell him. Hopefully they hold on to him. I hope he stays at Ipswich and leads them on, but they're going to sell him for a ton of money in the summer, and they deserve it, and he deserves it. He's excellent, but yeah, big bummer of a match. I think when you're Fulham and you're like, man, we can push on and we can keep going, rising up the table to get stepped back like this after a stretch of really, really tough games throughout December, where Fulham come out like, man, we're feeling really good about this. The unbeaten streak for Fulham continues, but drawing to Ipswich at home feels a little bit more like a loss. It's nice to say, even when Fulham don't have their best, you can still get a point, but to push on, we talked about Europe, to push on to Europe, you need to start turning those draws into wins. And until Fulham can do that, the Europe conversation is premature, unfortunately.
It is a good point. And as Alan alluded to, even for Liverpool with pretensions to win the league, a team like United having the troubles they are, you really should be winning those games at home. Yeah. So it doesn't really matter what strata you are in the table. There's always a game like that you come up against.
Yeah.
But do you see it as maybe an indication of a tiredness creeping into the squad, or do you think it was just a combination of, maybe a little bit of that, but also Ipswich finding some sort of form, given that they were crap for so long at the start of the season?
I think, it's interesting. It's less tiredness because this follows the pattern that Fulham have had all year. A little bit of rotation in the lineup. I think Tom Cairney started and didn't play poorly, but didn't light the world on fire. So a little bit of rotation, similar to what we saw when we drew with Southampton, where there was a lot of rotation in the squad. So that definitely plays into it a little bit, but it's just the same story. So it's, which I guess is good and bad. Good that it's not like, oh man, this is a new thing. Fulham are starting to nosedive. What are we doing? But bad that it's also like what we're in match week 20 coming into 21, and we still have these problems. Fulham have only lost 4 times this year, right? And that's, I think, Liverpool, Arsenal, and Forest. I think Forest have 4 as well. So like Liverpool and Arsenal are the only teams that have fewer losses, right? but Fulham have like 9 or 10, I think 9 draws. So that's the issue. And at the end of the year, if Fulham finish a few points out of Europe, we'll be bummed, but we'll be able to look at that and be like, well, we didn't put away Southampton. We didn't put away Ipswich twice. We lost to Wolves. Like, these are the kind of results that as a mid-table club you get most bummed about. So no, I don't think it's too concerning because it's been happening all year.
Let's look at this one because it feeds a little bit into what we talk about with the League Cup later on. But Alan, Brighton and Arsenal, it'd be easy for somebody who supports Liverpool or somebody who supports Chelsea to have a laugh in that and go, ha, ha, ha. Brighton are a very well-run team, aren't they? They're a very well-coached team, and they're going to cause problems for anybody, just like Forest are this season on the day. The games are getting tougher as the legs get tired, aren't they? It's not a quality thing. It's not a coaching thing. And we can laugh about the whole set-piece thing as well, but your set pieces still work. They won't work every game, but they're still hurting teams. So your injury crisis, losing the players you don't want to lose at the wrong times that you don't need to lose them. All this stuff has an impact, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you can't just lose one of the best, wingers in the league and then depend on 2 bench guys to take over. And of course, my camera goes out as soon as I start talking. Wonderful. Hold on a second. But no, I'm just gonna keep on talking while I try to fix this. But you just can't have 2 bench guys try to replace Bukayo Saka. He's just too much quality right there. And then we're becoming one-dimensional in our attack, where we're trying to just volley balls into the box, and unfortunately you don't have anyone clinical enough to finish that. Like, I love Jesus, but Jesus can't, we can't rely on Jesus all the time because he's not playing Crystal Palace all the time. And he got that goal against Brentford, and as much as we had a good kick about at the park against Brentford, we didn't have that against Brighton. So I got you there. But no, we just couldn't do anything against Brighton except for Nwaneri, the amazing bit of brilliance that he had. And honestly, up to that point, I felt we had a good control of the game. It was after the goal that I guess the team just decided to be complacent and just, say what you will. It could be tired legs, it could be tired mentality. All these games mounting out. I have a lot to say about the Premier League needing a break in like a winter break, just like every other major league does. But it's, those are just excuses at the end of the day. This is a team that's trying to win the title, and yeah, Liverpool can drop points, but we need to pick up those points whenever we can. Because how many more times is Liverpool going to drop points if we're going to win the title and they want to win the title? Again, like I said, like in a few episodes ago, Liverpool has players that have done this and have won it all and have won both the Champions League and both the Premier League. Arsenal, the players that we have, Bukayo Saka has won the FA Cup, and so has Martinelli, but they weren't starters on that team. You have Gabriel Jesus has won multiple Premier Leagues, and that's, but he was on the bench, to Aguero. You also have Zinchenko, who's won Premier Leagues and hasn't really been much of anything lately. And then as far as other trophies that other players have won in other teams is probably Declan Rice with West Ham. And that was a European trophy, which is something that Arsenal hasn't done since 96. Or before that, 94. So, again, the mentality just needs to be picked up. It needs to be a next man up type of deal. Like, I love how Nwaneri just came onto the field and just took it to Brighton. He was like one of the most. He's been stellar. The amount of times he's come on. He's 7. No, yeah, he is 17.
He's only 17.
Yeah, he's only 17. He's just a kid. And he's doing just a damn fine job of getting in the field and finding a way to either assist or score. And unfortunately, he picks up an injury, and that's the other problem. It's like we cannot just. I don't understand. Just the physio needs to go, or we need to get a new physio, or whatever. Every single issue that has plagued us. It can be bad refereeing. I have a whole other topic to talk about that penalty, but whatever. Doesn't matter at this point. It doesn't matter, because if we don't overcome any of those problems, because every team faces adversity, every team faces problems, every team faces issues against the ref and issues against injuries. They all find ways to fucking overcome it. And I'm getting a little heated. You guys can't really see me get heated right now.
You're so angry. You froze.
I am sounding heated.
Somebody clip this and get this to Arteta. Clip it and get it in the dressing room.
And it's not. I don't even think it's Arteta's fault. I think these players just gave up on the fact that they played a good 30 minutes of ball against Brighton and then immediately just gave up any sense of formation, because all of a sudden it's raining. They're getting tired. They're feeling comfortable. You're playing at one of the most toughest stadiums to go away against. Brighton isn't these up and come. Brighton is not an up and coming team that's just coming from the championship and trying to survive. No, they actually want aspirations of going back into Europe. That is their goal. That is their end goal, and they have the manager to do that. They have the players to do that. They just need to get the shit together too. But at the same time, Arsenal, we have gone past the stage of just going to Europe is enough. We are now going into the stage of trying to win the league. And I'm sorry, but Trossard and Martinelli and Gabriel Jesus are the three guys that I absolutely, I love them, but they have to go, and we need to actually replace them with Isak, Eze, and whoever, maybe Kingsley Coleman. I don't know.
Darwin Nunez.
Darwin Nunez.
Darwin Nunez.
No.
Darwin Nunez.
and don't give me Rashford either.
We talked about the 5-0. Yes or no?
Not in depth.
I want to talk about the specifics, because we had a great conversation during the watch-along game for the Brentford Arsenal one about Thomas Frank not doing what he's used to doing. But when he returns to that against who was it against? I've forgotten now already.
Southampton.
Against Southampton. I know Southampton are having a weak time, but my point during that watch-along was that when managers change their style from one game, if it's not something that the players are being coached into, you get things like that Arsenal game where you lose a lead unnecessarily. Were you happy to see Frank trust himself and trust his own ideas again in that game? Because it's an astounding result at any point for any team in the league. But to have your style of play validated like that, it must be a good thing as a fan to know, that was a one-off. The Arsenal was a one-off. Maybe don't do that again. Maybe do it this way, because look what happens.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, as you said, we had a really good conversation about Brentford's tactics against Arsenal during the game, and we were both pretty disappointed with the kind of formation, I guess, with the attitude we had in that game. We sat deep for far too long. And yeah, honestly, Macca, as soon as the team sheet came out right hour before the game, 8 o'clock sharp here for that in the morning, we put out 4-3-3, really attacking lineup. Jensen comes back into the team. He was wonderful in midfield. We had the Danish stars of Damsgaard, Jensen, Norgard across that middle, all of whom, on their day, our best player. And then up front, we had the pace and the clinical finishing of Kevin Schade, Johan Wissa, and Mbumo, all of whom delivered goals in this game. And then you even look at our fullbacks, right? We had Keane Lewis-Potter, who's a winger playing at fullback for us, and Mads Ruslev, who is a classic fullback, but he has the pace to kind of get forward. He's not the most efficient going forward, but he has a bit more pace. So we put out as almost like, as a response to the Arsenal game, right? As the antidote to it, we put out this really attacking team. We took the game to Southampton from the first minute. It was, the scoreline's 5-0. Honestly, that flatters Southampton. They were awful. We missed some really, really easy chances. Wissa, who has one of the best conversion rates in the league, blasted over a one-on-one. Keane Lewis-Potter hit one wide, again, one-on-one. So, and Ramsdale didn't even have a bad game. He made plenty of solid saves. So, honestly, I'm glad it got to 5-0. 2 of those goals were in injury time, because that really, that scoreline shows the dominance we had. If I was a Southampton fan, I'd be really disappointed, because they offered nothing for 90 minutes. Yeah, 5-10 minutes here and there of trying to attack, but from the minute the whistle blew to start the game to the minute it ended, we were dominant, we were cohesive, we were dynamic. And yeah, we deserve 5 goals. We deserve plenty more. And to see your front three all score, I mean, is that not a great validation of a 4-3-3? I mean, that's like a Liverpool-esque kind of moment when all of the front three score. So, yeah, I was delighted. It was a lovely way to put the Arsenal game behind us. And I said that at the end of our live stream. I think I said, we've had these games where we've been disappointed so far this season. We've managed to put them in the rear view mirror really quickly. And yeah, it was a great day out. And, this was our first away win of the season. And yes, Southampton are at the bottom of the table for a reason. Yes, they showed up and put in a really sorry performance with a new manager. I mean, that's disappointing for them. Yes. But for us to go into this with some bad form and to get a 5-0 first win of the season on the road, clean sheet as well. We haven't had many of them. We've had 2 of them this season. So many positives. And yeah, I mean, if you're a fan in the Premier League, whether it's Fulham, Villa, Brentford, like if your team scores 5, doesn't concede a goal, that's a great day.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Now, let me look at the... Obviously, we talked the Liverpool United game to death. Everton in trouble again. Chelsea drawn 1-1 against Crystal Palace. We've all talked at some point one way or the other that Chelsea are great when Cole Palmer plays well, but they're not the complete team. But the game I want to talk about for all 4 of us that are here right now. Wolves against Forest, the return for Nuno Espirito Santo to his old stomping ground. But Shay, that is a story as good as Aston Villa's was last year, isn't it? This year, I mean, he's doing a fantastic job with them. And if I'm a Spurs fan, I'll be. Well, I was going to say kicking myself, but I'd be going to kick Daniel Levy, really, wouldn't I?
Yep. I mean, Nuno showed it even at Wolves. Like, look how good Wolves were when he was there. They were always, like we've talked about it, they were consistent. They were always that team, like, hey, they're going to always come out. You're not going to really know what to expect, but they're always going to play some really nice football. But Spurs getting him, they just don't give anybody time. Like, I mean, we've seen it with Jose. You have him for all his faults. Jose's still one of the top managers of all time. And, they just don't give him a chance. You have Nuno, he does the same thing. He had Spurs playing well. And then they fire him. Like, right now they're giving Big Ange a chance, but I think he's realizing it too. I think the managers end up realizing too. Like, they're like the Dallas Cowboys. I hate to say it. You go there, they got money, they can't do anything with it, and then the owners are just not there. They're too cheap. Like, they'll spend and buy the players that they need, but they won't do it. I think Nuno has turned this team around at Forest. The fact that they've only lost, I think, 4 matches,
4,
and they're on a current 5-game win streak. Like, they're playing lights out, and it's nice to see. Like, they were one of the main teams back in the day, so. I'm sure their fans are loving it. It's good to see because, we were in the same position last year. So same thing, if we have a Forest fan on this, they'll have the same kind of outlook that I have. Like, we make it to the Champions League. Should we win it or, compete, it'll be really nice, but you got to maintain. This is, I think, the opportunity for it, like how with Fulham and Brentford, if they can get there. You have that really nice run of league, and then once they get these extra games, these teams we aren't built for it yet. We're trying, and you can tell that the league is not allowing it to happen because I guarantee you Forest doing this well right now, they're going to have the same exact issues we have where they're going to come up with some BS like, oh, you need to sell some players, otherwise you're going to get fined. Because the more I look at it, I truly believe the FA and the Premier League they did it to Newcastle last year. Like, they did it to us, they're going to do it to Forest where they're just going to say, hey, you got to sell off your stars to make money or keep even. So I hope they keep doing it. They are on pace to pass Arsenal this weekend, so I'm rooting for them.
Alex and Glenn, we've got Alan back. Hey, Alex and Glenn, here's my question to you. Villa have a status as a European Cup winning club like Forest, but Forest haven't even been in the Premier League an awful lot for so long. From your situations, does that give you hope that backing a manager, giving him the right tools to do his job, even if you don't have the same resources as everybody else? I mean, I've been ranting and raving on the Discord about Chris Wood all season for Liverpool. I'd rather have Chris Wood at 33 years old than Darwin Núñez at 26, 27. Like, the guy's a goal machine as well.
Yeah.
I want to find out what fizzy drinks he's drinking so we can have some of those too. But Alex, it shows what's possible, doesn't it? It kind of breaks the idea that you have to have oil money or you have to have Russian money or whatever. That if you just manage well, maybe you won't be the league winners, but you could do bloody good things, couldn't you?
Yeah, and I to be fair, I am not a full-on Forest hater this year. Like I'm on the Forest hate train, and not true hate, but I just think Forest are an example of when they came up and they spent however much hundred millions of dollars from their. I think he's a real dick, like their Greek shipping magnate owner, who's like just kind of a sloppy guy. And when he was fined recently. He's suspended for like spitting at a ref. Remember that in the tunnel? And like he said, "Oh, I was clearing my throat." And they're like, "No, we have video of you spitting at the ref." And he was like, "Well, oops." So like just a real class act. And they came up and spent. I think, unfortunately, I like my view of it is it's kind of a validation of if you just have a super wealthy owner and just spitball hundreds of millions of dollars out there.
Literally in his case.
Literally in his case. Hudson-Odoi, who's the other guy that scored today? Morgan Gibbs-White from Wolves. You just kind of scattershot by a bunch of these guys. Remember, it was a year or two ago, they had like 40 guys.
Yeah,
and 150 million
players.
150 million.
Yeah, didn't have a team.
Steve Cooper is like, how am I supposed to fit all these guys? One, on a 25-man roster. Two, it's on the field at the same time. And it's a validation that, like, sometimes, to your point, Macca, if you manage it well, it can work. And so for all year, I've been banging the drum of, like, Forrester, they're not overrated. This isn't real. And at some point, though, you are what your record says you are. And they're in, third or fourth on 40 points.
Third, yeah.
So at some point, maybe I'm wrong and they have put it together. But, yeah, I'm more of a Forrest hater where I hate to see that scattershot approach validated. And it's like, okay, yeah, if you got an owner who's willing to play real fast and loose with whatever it's called, PSR, or whatever it's called now, profit sustainability, and be real fast and loose and risk it all, which is ironic from a club that's been in the doldrums of the championship forever. If you're an owner willing to do that and skirt some rules in, here you go. And that's kind of.
I forgot about that. I guess you're right. I didn't completely forgot about. Yeah, their time will come because I forgot they bought like 20-something players.
It's wild. And everyone at the time, everyone was like, how are they doing this? Two, none of these players fit together. They're just like a big price tags and everyone's extorting Forrest, but if Forrest is like whatever. And it worked, to be fair. Like Steve Cooper built the foundation and got it going. And to Forrest credit, when they fired Steve Cooper, I was on here, other people probably on here, like, what are they doing? Like, what is happening? I did. And I was like, what's going on here? They did him dirty. And now look at him. It worked. So for that aspect, you're right. Like they saw the writing on the wall, made a change when they need to, and they've taken off. But yeah, that's my take. Is I'm more of a Forrest hater, and I'll take it. I'll admit it. But
let me just put a little flip to that coin, Glenn. If an unscrupulous, loose with the flame magnate owner came along to Brentford, a club like yours is actually set up to be ready, as long as they don't interfere, is set up to take advantage of that, really, aren't they? We could talk about Steve Cooper's tactics, maybe not being being a little bit more entertainment sort of oriented than Santos. He doesn't care about entertaining. They've got the lowest average percentage per game in the league. They don't care about having the ball. They only care about what damage they can do when they eventually get it. But Glenn, if you're a Brentford fan, you've got Thomas Frank in there, you've got a system in place, and you know yourself as a fan, if you could just get a better player in this position and a little bit better player in that position, we could actually do well. Morally, because we've had this at Liverpool this week with the rumours of Musk being interested in buying Liverpool, which would probably be the end of a lot of our associations with Liverpool Football Club if it happened. But morally, is there a point where you go, you know what, I wouldn't mind, as long as it's not a certain group of owners with a certain moral position, like if it's a sweaty, spitballing Greek magnate with a bit more cash than the current owners have, I might be okay with it, because what we have only needs a little tweak here and there that we just can't afford right now. The sky's the limit.
Yeah, we might be trying to kind of thread that needle at Brentford, because Matthew Benham, our owner, lifelong fan, brilliant guy. We've been open or interested in additional investment, I think, that came out maybe a couple months ago, which might be trying to mediate between both sides here, which is kind of keeping the current leadership and ownership structure whilst figuring out a way to get that extra kind of cash injection, right, Macca, that can really help make a difference. If we had a high quality fullback, we've got two, they've been injured for ages, but if we had a high quality fullback and, maybe our record forward, if he had been fit, one or two extra players, and then, maybe we would be maybe top 8, 7 now, but because we haven't been able to make those pieces happen, or, thinking about the January transfer window, we're not really in a position to buy. We don't do business in January, right? That's the antithesis of the Brentford approach. It's a bad market. It's a seller's market. It's not a buyer's market. We all know that. But there are some positions like centre back and right back and left back that we're in desperate need of reinforcements, right? We cannot continue with this back four for the rest of the season. It's not going to work. So yeah, you look at it and you can think, some extra investment while retaining this current model would be good. I know we'd use the money well, unlike many clubs. And Alex, you're totally right to look at Forest and point to their splurge of 150 million 2 summers ago. Now, what's interesting about their team right now is they've almost completely flipped that model. They have a bunch of pretty surprising kind of Premier League cast-offs, really. Think about Hudson-Odoi. They got him for nothing. Chelsea totally undersold him. It was barely anything for him. Alanga, another kind of big team cast-off. Chris Wood, who would have thought he would be banging in the goals, as you said, Maka, this season. The only player...
It's almost like they went Moneyball all of a sudden after spending 150 million. That didn't work.
And what's funny is the only player to actually basically survive this splurge of spending from 2 years ago was their most expensive signing. It's Morgan Gibbs-White in the center of their midfield. He was 45 million. That was probably money well spent. And I hope he has a good career with England moving forward, because he's a baller. Like, he's a really, really good player. And you saw that with their first goal, right? Brilliant counter, good finish. It's actually funny. And some of their back line, they've got one of the best defensive back lines in the country right now, right? And some of those signings, even Morello, they weren't big money signings. They were Brentford signings. They were really smart signings from abroad who have really stepped up to the Premier League, right? You look at all of the back four, like Aina's been amazing for them as well. Everyone that cycled through that back line has been really effective. So yes, they spent all this money. They wasted all that money. If you look at who's still there, Emmanuel Dennis, if you remember him from Watford, they spent 20 million on him. I don't even remember him playing for them. Yeah. So they did that. That didn't work, and they've changed their approach. And if you look at the squad value, at least how much they paid for it, it wouldn't be crazy beyond Gibbs-White, but it's been really effective. And, I think they're the best team we've played this season when they kind of brushed us aside a few weeks ago at home. Yeah. And I watched the Wolves game. And honestly, it wasn't very Nuno-like. The game was actually a bit more open than usual. And it was end to end. And I thought it was a little bit different to how I've seen Forest play this season. But when it mattered, they were clinical. Wood scored, Gibbs-White scored, substitute Owoni scored. Whereas Strand Larsen for Wolves, who had probably 3 or 4 presentable chances, he couldn't, it was a bit lucky. One of them hit cells, one of them he just misses. But if that was Chris Wood, then maybe Wolves score a couple of goals in the form he's in. So credit to Forest. And I agree with your critique, Alex, wholeheartedly. But at the same time, I also really admire how good defensively this Forest team is and how lethal they are on the break. Like that first goal. In transition, Wolves are caught in possession. They're 1-0 down. That's really exciting football. And I love Alanga, and I really like Hudson-Odoi. This squad ticks a lot of boxes for me in terms of looking at a really tight-knit, high-quality team.
Alan, I'm going to give you the last word on this, because you know what it's like to have owners who are using your club almost like a plaything, and you know what it's like to have owners that actually care and will back the people that are trying to bring success. Sometimes, as much as we talk about players and as much as we talk about coaches and tactical systems, sometimes having the right person in charge of the finances and the actual overall running of the club, that could be just as important, can't it?
Yeah, it's just as important as anything. You can't just rely on spending and spending and spending. You have to have some kind of sustainable model to that. I guess unless you're an oil state like City that can buy any player wherever they want and it works. Some other teams, they try that model and they bring in an American owner and then they completely mess things up. And Chelsea are where they're at now, but they're lucky, I think. And I think that Nottingham, I wouldn't say the same thing about Nottingham. I mean, they do have really good players. They have a lot of good players that work well together. They spent the money correctly. I knew they spent it just as brazenly and crazy as Chelsea have, and bringing in 20 signings and all that. But I think when you have owners that can actually back the manager that they have, and do the right things, maybe make the right moves that everyone thinks is wrong, like firing the coach last season, which we all thought was crazy.
Yeah.
And now look at where they're at now. They're definitely, we're over the halfway mark. They've played every single team. They've lost a few times. Arsenal did beat them 3-0. That was nice. But but at the same time, it's like they're still in a hunt. I mean, let's be honest. Like, maybe they're not going to win the league, but they're 6 points off of it right now, even though Liverpool has a game in hand, and it'll just same number of points as Arsenal and have one more win than Arsenal. So I don't like the way that they're doing it, but I guess big up to them, and they have a really good solid team.
And Mac, just like full disclosure, as a Fulham fan, maybe I have an extra level of bitterness for this because Fulham did that in 2018 when they came up, when John Terry was crying at midfield at Wembley. They spent 100 million or something like that, and it didn't work. And Forest, that's the wild thing. Somehow Forest survived that season when they spent all that money, and then Alan, to your point, like a switch flipped, and they fired Steve Cooper. And things are now, like to your point, Glenn, too, like the recruitment improved, everything is better now and different. And it's almost like they were somehow able to weather that really bad summer that for most clubs, and for Fulham, it ruined Fulham for several seasons. Like, to get those signings off the books of that 5-year or 3-year PSR window and 5-year window of amortization, it was damaging to the club for several years. And somehow Forest have just been able to like kind of brush that off and then keep on going, which maybe it's a bitterness and jealousy, but it's wild that they've been able to do it. It's unbelievable, because that would sink a lot of clubs. Is that reckless level of spending and then no success to back it up that first year. And then somehow here they are.
Okay.
We were looked at in a sense too, because we had to buy, I think the year we came up, we literally had nothing but loan players. I'm pretty sure half the team was loanees in the championship.
Yeah.
And we spent 40-something million on Tyrone Mings, which obviously he was going to stay. But same thing, we had to buy more than we needed. But then the same thing I think it was happened is like we had the manager and just didn't sell, but then we also had like at least we had assets we could sell. Like where, like I said, Forest they don't have anybody truly to sell. They do now, but like at the time they couldn't sell anybody.
They spent 25 years in the championship, 30 years.
Yeah, they didn't have Jack Grealish where you could just sell somebody wants it for $100 million. Like that's what really helped us out. And I feel like Fulham, you have some youth kids that are coming up, and I think that's where that also comes into play. Like you got to have the academy, and they built that. And I don't know if Forest is doing that because, like now you said that, I don't know if there's any players that actually came through their academy or like any kids that they have. They're all people that they've bought. But Fulham has had kids come up. Same with Brentford has always been known for that. So I think
they all play at Liverpool now.
Yeah, they're all Liverpool. So like Liverpool has paid you and made you money and helped sustain the club. So
I'm pretty certain the secret is to have an owner who will threaten to spit at you if you don't do your job.
Yeah.
Let's go to the tables. There we have it. There, Liverpool still top with a game in hand, but that result against United was probably more damaging than we think as Liverpool fans. But we'll find that out. But as we said, Forest there, same number of points as Arsenal. Chelsea dropping back a bit. Villa, not disappearing off the top half of the table, still pushing up there. Maybe want to get a handle on that goal difference soon. But Fulham, not that far behind. That is a fantastic position for Fulham to be in. And then the bottom half of the table, Brentford just there, far enough away, I think, from the relegation scrap to be a little bit comfortable. But being above Spurs, I think if Brentford finishes above Spurs and United, you're finishing really, really well this season, and it's quite possible that will happen. And then I think everybody from Everton down is in that race right now. Yeah. Palace and West Ham could eventually get drawn into it. But speaking of West Ham, and this is the thing we want to talk about briefly before we go to the FA Cup games for the weekend. So listening to Sirius XFM or whatever it's called, the Grumpy Pundits, they were talking about two things. Number one, I was not aware that Sean Dyche is under pressure at Everton. I know the new owners coming in, probably we spoke about it either on this show or one of the others, that they might want a different style of play to attract more eyeballs to Everton than what Sean Dyche offers. They're not doing fantastically. So he's under a bit of pressure. And then apparently, another thing I did not know, I can never say his name right, but Lopetegui, whatever way you say it, still turning up the training whilst the shadiest of shady ownerships. We can talk about oil states and we can talk about Greek spitting magnates, but the West Ham owners are probably some of the shadiest people that have ever been involved in club ownership, looking for his replacement whilst he is going in every day to work. Graham Potter is suggested as the leading candidate. Shay, what do you think of that situation for both of those managers there? Number one, and then number two, is Graham Potter all that they should be looking to him automatically and not maybe somewhere else, maybe somebody in the Championship or in Scotland or Holland or somewhere like that, why is he the go-to person right now?
For West Ham, I know it's kind of crazy because I think at the beginning of the show, or like of the season when we all had our first show, I think we all were, kind of had them as our sleeper team. Like they spent money really well and they brought in some really good players in the transfer window. We all thought he was going to be the manager to, get them to that next stage, but he obviously is not. And the fact that they're halfway through the season getting ready to potentially get rid of him is crazy, but it's not something that we haven't seen before. Like all of our teams have done it. So it's something that we've all, had to deal with. But to bring Graham Potter back, I mean, I truly don't think he's that bad of a coach. I think Chelsea's situation when he took over was just in absolute shambles. Like they were getting rid of Abramovich and they had him. You had Bowley come in who tried to run it just like an American sports franchise. And I think they tried to tell him that. And there's no telling no when the guy is a multi-billionaire and he's going to do what he wants to do. So I guarantee you Potter didn't want half those players, but you can't say much without it. And they were also just all over the place. They hadn't had a consistent manager, and I think he would have done fine if they would have given him the time to do it. Because we saw it with Pochettino. He finally got them steady ship. They fired him again. So I think he would probably do well for West Ham because they have the players to do it. I just, maybe his style isn't lights out, but maybe that's what they need. They just need the stability. Kind of what we always make fun of Sean Dyche for playing boring defensive soccer, but like maybe you need that just to steady the ship and then move on. Now for Everton, it may help them out. I just don't think they have the talent to do it. So it doesn't matter who the manager truly is, because Sean Dyche is showing like, hey, he has done enough, but they're not firing. So maybe they get that new manager balance, but their issue, like with the new owners coming in, they just don't have the money to spend. I think the stadium has taken a lot out of them. Yeah. And they're going to be in that boat too. I don't know how these rules are going to work with that, but I think that'll be some kind of debt that the new owners will take. And, Potter comes in, he's dealing with Sean Dyche's players that he's had for the last, I don't even know if they were Sean Dyche's players. They're like whoever the previous manager was, because I don't think Sean Dyche has actually spent money the entire time he's been there. He's just dealt with what they've had. So it's just it's a losing battle for Everton at least. But I think maybe West Ham would be the better fit. I just don't know if they're that ready to move on with them though.
Let me ask you, Glenn. Lopetegui came in with a reputation and a fancy name, but I just checked there because I was positive that I was correct about this. He's only won one trophy as a manager in his career. Is there a sense that some owners, and I'm talking maybe like the likes of Simon Jordan, I don't think he owns any clubs now, but that kind of manager who makes it about them as much as about the club, like they're also the personality. The West Ham ownership, I think, they're mostly, TV personalities as well as much as anything else. Media personalities, at least, saw the name and didn't look into it. Didn't look into his background. Just like, we're going to replace David Moyes with this guy. We're going to replace, this guy with this guy. This one has a fancy name, so he must be good. I can't pronounce it, so he must be great. Is there a sense of that? Like, there's some English club owners that just don't get it. You have to do your due diligence on these people.
Yeah, well, it was a strange move anyway, because I think the West Ham fan base is quite entitled because, David Moyes gave them a lot of really high finishes in the Premier League, won them.
And a trophy.
Won them a European trophy. Exactly. And there was just this begrudging sense that the quality of the football wasn't like aesthetically pleasing enough for them. Could say similar with Spurs fans as well. A slightly different situation. So so the point of that is that when they let Moyes go, essentially, despite his really excellent record for the club, there was definitely a sense of the grass is greener. And also Lopetegui they signed because they were trying to promise the fans more attacking, fluid football, right? That isn't the reputation that Lopetegui even had. He was known as a more defensively minded manager, which is funny on two levels because A, that's not what the fan base was demanding. At least with Spurs, they delivered on saying, hey, you want a style of football that's going to be fun. Well, we have the right manager for that. Obviously, they're suffering in terms of results, and that's a debate that's ongoing. But they got what they asked for. He's not Conte, he's not Mourinho. Whereas Wolves, as he showed at Wolves, Lopetegui, he is more defensively minded. So that's one thing. So it's the opposite of what they asked for. And what makes it extra funny is they've been shipping loads of goals this season. So he's actually he's actually delivered on that front on his kind of style poorly, because he has a squad that isn't really suited for that style of football. I think they've got a lot of really quick kind of mercurial players. Think about Paqueta, Kudos, Bowen. Like, that's an exciting team. There's some star quality in that squad. And it's obvious that Lopetegui is not getting the best out of that squad. It's obvious that he was a shambolic appointment. It's obvious that the fans, hopefully, I hope a fair few fans are thinking, actually, we should have respected Moyes a bit more and held him in higher esteem when he was here, because this is the consequence of always demanding more. Sometimes you get worse. And I think it's, from my perspective, I totally agree with everything you said, Shay. Some great points on styles and squads. I think if Potter was going to go to one, I'm sure it would be West Ham. His style would suit that squad more. And as you said, Shay, the Everton team is just a bit of a mess. And they're in a slightly different situation where they kind of have a more defensive squad, and Deitch is getting a stack of clean sheets, and their problem is that they just cannot go forward and they can't score goals. And, Calvert-Lewin, we've talked about before, is just so out of form. They haven't spent money. So, West Ham.
That's a polite way of saying crap.
Yeah, well, yeah, they are. Like it's a really, uninspiring squad. West Ham have star players. Bowen will have a good career with England. As I said, Kudos, Paqueta, these are brilliant, brilliant players. You just don't have that at Everton. So if I was Potter, that's what I'd lean towards. The one thing I heard that was interesting, I was listening to a West Ham fan on a podcast today, and he seemed to think that from what he heard inside the club, it might be a short-term contract, maybe till the end of the season. And that would surprise me. And he said he justified it by saying, well, this would be a chance for Potter to kind of market himself and get back in the conversation in the Premier League. But for me, I don't know what Potter would be able to get out of a 6-month deal at a team kind of loitering in mid-table. Yeah. Like, what are you going to do? Go up 3 places? Go down a place? Like, I don't see any utility to that kind of deal for him. So if that does happen, which is being rumored, that would surprise me. And maybe that would show his desperation to be managing again. And he hasn't had the offers he was hoping for. He's always on the shortlist, right? We've heard his name, so many appointments, but he hasn't been signed by a club recently, right? So he wants to get back into management. And as you said, Shay, I think West Ham's a better fit. Do I see it working out? It's quite a toxic club, Macca. You mentioned the kind of nasty owners. I've mentioned the entitled fans. Like, it's not the best environment for Potter to thrive in.
Alex, here's my question. I'm not one of the ones that was ever swayed by Graham Potter. I always thought he was just a very defensive manager who was getting away with having a defensive team that didn't lump the ball forward like Sean Dyche would have his teams do. He at least attempted to play football, but I always thought Eddie Howe of the two was the better manager. So what is it? Is it a thing about English football where they're trying to keep English managers in the game? And because English managers don't go abroad, I know he did. He's actually, ironically, one of the exceptions. But because and go abroad to do their coaching education, which is one of the better things you can do. Don't go to the English FA and have your hand held throughout the UEFA process there and get the badge ready, you're good or not. Go to Germany and learn some new ideas. Go and do the Spanish one if you want to learn Spanish to do that. Get some new ideas and bring them back. Brendan Rodgers did that, and he's probably the best of all the British managers if we count the 6 counties as British, which we will for the purposes of this argument, but they're clearly not. That's my political soapbox for the day. Yeah. But is it just that they're trying to keep managers like Potter in the English game, which leads to a promotion of mediocrity almost?
So again, I talked to her about a Fulham perspective. Fulham lived this, right? Like, Scott Parker is the definition of that, where there is an English manager tax, and we've all seen those. The memes with the English player has like a Brazilian name and he's worth 100 million or 50 million, and he has an Italian name and he's worth 70 million, and he has an English name and he's worth 500 million. Like that's the meme, but in manager form. Scott Parker got the job at Fulham because he was a club hero and he got the job.
England's brave Scotty Parker.
Right. So he's taken us up. He took us up, and then I still don't understand how he got the squad that was relegated in 2020, 2021. It's inexcusable and unfathomable, and should end a coaching career. The Adam Ola-Lookman, Ola Aina, Joachim Andersen, like it's unbelievable that squad was relegated. Anyway, he goes and gets a job at I think it was Club Brugge in Belgium, and is run out of town. So what happens? He gets a job at a top championship side in Burnley, and then now has them in contention to come back up. And it's this weird churn where like there's this prominence put on English managers, like you said, Mac, to keep them in the game and to elevate them up. I don't know if it's a hope that one day they can manage the English national squad and take them back to glory like in '66. I don't understand. I don't know what it is. But this nurturing of English managers, it beyond the point where any other manager really would have been like, okay, they can't cut it right now. Let's let them develop somewhere. But yeah, it's like this weird. The opposite of the opposite.
Like somehow Rooney still keeps getting jobs. I don't know how.
Right. And it is.
But like he literally keeps getting jobs. I don't understand that.
When it happens too often to be a coincidence, right? It happens too often where there are too many mediocre managers who are English who get another chance after chance after chance. And I don't necessarily count Sean Dyche in that. He's got a very particular thing that he does, and that's Sean Dyche. And if Everton are thinking about letting him go, what did you – it's like in the rest of development, he opens up the bag in the fridge, and it's a dead bird, and he's like, I'm not really sure what I expected. Like, that is Sean Dyche. I don't know what you expected differently from a Sean Dyche coach club. So if they let him go, then I don't know what to tell you. But him, I account a little bit differently. But every other English manager, right, like – they kind of occupy this. Steve Cooper, unfortunately, is kind of a similar vibe where he's kind of at his level. This is it.
I hate to make fun of Maka, but your golden boy, Steven Gerrard, ass. So
it's true. It's true.
These guys keep getting jobs, and
to get fired in Saudi Arabia. So
because I'll go to Alan about this because he Arsenal have got that experience with the continental managers, like the first club, pretty much not the first club. I think Christian Gross was the first one at Spurs way back when, but Arsene Wenger, the first one to show.
I saw that good book back there on the bookcase.
that show the value of that continental thinking. But there's this famous story that was told. Well, not famous. It's famous in coaching circles. That I heard, which was basically that. What was his name? I think he coached Fulham. Tigana. Fulham? Yeah. Was on the French coaching course when Gerard Houllier was the coaching guy, and they got assignments every night to do for the next day, scout this game or put this training plan together. And he felt because he was Jean Tigana, he didn't have to do any of the work, and essentially got kicked off the course because they didn't care who he was as a player. Yeah. They cared what he did as a coach. Marco van Basten apparently failed his first badge at the KMVB in Holland because he didn't think he had to do the work because he was Marco van Basten. But the idea, their philosophy or thinking was that it's more than that. You can't just be a player. You got to know how to plan these things. You got to know what the fitness levels are, etc., etc. They take it seriously. My question is, Alan, for somebody whose club essentially pioneered continental coaching, where coaching is seen as a separate skill to playing, is there are England still so behind the times that they think that just because somebody was a great player or played under a great manager, somehow by osmosis, they are going to be a great manager themselves? Because we see that with the Man United, Alex Ferguson coaching tree, all of his ex-players are terrible managers and coaches. Yeah. But Arsenal led the way. They said, no, look, we're going to back this guy who's nobody has ever heard of, from the guy at Krampusay, and look what happens.
Austin,
one of the greatest Arsenal teams of all time.
Yeah. One of the greatest teams ever of all time. Not just
Arsenal. Don't go that far.
Okay. Is your guys' gold? No. No, it's true. It's like Arsenal broke that mold. Like Arsene came from, he started his career as a player, and he worked in the background at not Nancy. Yeah, I've been reading the book, so he was working in the background at Nancy. He was helping in developing the youth academies at Strasbourg. He goes from Strasbourg to he went from Strasbourg to Monaco and helped. By the time he got to Monaco, he helped out that academy as well. And from Monaco, he gets fired, and then he goes to Japan, and then it was at his time at Monaco where you met David Dean. And they had a good conversation at in '94. There was talks already about hiring Arsene to Arsenal, and when they fired Graham, I was about to say Graham Potter, but when they fired George Graham, but they moved on to Bruce Roish. They weren't ready. The English board at the time, which is still pretty much English except for the exception of 2 Americans, they didn't want to jump the ship over to a French manager yet. They wanted to go on and hire Bruce Roish, which is from Scotland, same mold as George Graham. But they didn't want to break that whole UK manager thing. They want to kept that going. And when it didn't work, they went back to David Dean and let's see if this guy wants to leave Japan. And they brought him on, and the rest is history. I haven't read the rest of that book, but that portion. But I know what happens. But I mean, it's the truth. It's there are higher standards when it comes to foreign managers, when it comes to England, and there are higher standards when players try to become managers, from foreign players try to become managers even in their country. I mean, Patrick Vieira, one of the greatest players, in Premier League history, one of the greatest players of all time, is struggling to be a manager. He's been fired from MLS clubs. He's been fired from French league clubs. He's been fired from Crystal Palace. He's jumping around from league to league. I think he recently just got a job right now. I think it's in Italy. I'm not 100% sure about that. But it's testament to where English managers, they get babied into, your turn is done, but now we're going to go to another English club like Everton. Can't get things right ever. They had Carlo Ancelotti and decided, no, we're not going to keep this guy around, and we're just going to get I don't know who was after Carlo. I think it was who was after Carlo. It was Chelsea. Rafa right? First, Carlos. Yeah. Yeah. I think it was, yeah. But either way, they went back and got Sean Dyche, and now they're going to get rid of Sean Dyche, and then Graham Potter or whoever is going to go, or no, Scott Parker is going to bring up Burnley up, and then once Burnley is about to be relegated next season, Sean Dyche is going to be in Burnley, and it's just this freaking
the circle's
carousel.
Complete.
Yeah, the circle's complete. It's just this huge circle, and I was laughing and thinking about it, and I think a lot of clubs are too backwards thinking and not willing to take the risks in some of these managers, and I don't get it. I think eventually there will be a good English manager, but right now there isn't. I can't really think of it.
Let me ask all of you this, and you can jump in if you have a thought on it, because Alan makes a good point about Wenger, is that he did start off with coaching youth teams. Thomas Frank was a youth team coach as well. All of the continental managers that are successful, and then I'm just throwing Brendan Rodgers in there because of the British managers, he's the most successful right now, trophy wise. But he also started coaching youths. Whereas the likes of Gerrard, etc., they may do a season with the academy, but that's not necessarily that's literally like ticking a box. I have to do one season with the academy while I'm doing my pro license, because you got to coach a certain amount of hours to get your coaching licenses. I'll do this, but then I want to get into a first team immediately after that. Yeah. Whereas everybody else had invested time into being youth coaches while they were learning and learning their craft. Do you think, boys, that the fact that you have to learn to get through to absolute knucklehead teenage dopes every day of the week, but you have to learn to communicate, you have to learn to really sell a message a different way to different groups of people, stands those continental coaches in good stead in a way that those ex-player British professionals and English professionals, they don't learn that. They think it's about management. They think it's about, bringing all the lads out for a drink on a Thursday night before the Saturday game, and then we're all going to be great. It's 4-4-2 today, lads, will be fine. Do you think that investment in youth coaching from the coaches that are successful is the thing that English coaches are missing?
I definitely agree, because Alex, we're American football fans, and most of the coaches don't go straight into head coaching. You have to start as a position coach, or high school, middle school, high school, work your way up. Like a lot of these head coaches that are in the NFL all started in the at the pitch. Like you have to earn it, which you have to earn your coaching badges too. So like a lot of these managers had to earn it somehow. But like how you said, Mecca, they do a stint as the academy team where they're not really doing anything. They're just like, hey, you were the club legend. You're still working with, Jurgen and them, but we're going to go ahead and like fast forward this.
Oh.
I will say, I think John Terry's one that has kind of done it that way because he still hasn't got a job, but he has been an assistant manager for all these other clubs and managers where he hasn't attempted.
John Terry.
Yeah, like he would.
Yeah, no, I think when he takes his first manager job, he's going to be good.
He did it with our manager. I just went Blake. Dean Smith, like he was under Steve Bruce after he retired. He learned under Steve, and then when Dean Smith came in, he sat under him the whole time. He had probably plenty of opportunities to come in because if Frank Lampard got a job right after he was fired, they're going to go after John Terry. Like that's the club legend and England legend as well. But how you said, I don't think they don't do that, and I don't know why they're so scared of that. Like you have to learn. Like even if you go League One, I feel like that's still professional, but you're learning the trade in the bottom of the leagues where you're dealing with players that aren't true professionals. They're semi-professional, so they have real lives outside of soccer, and that's not what they're focused on. And how you said, I think what the issue is, like you're giving these ex-players that first opportunity. They're also looking at like, hey, do you know who I am? They come in with that stigma. Like I guarantee you Steven Gerrard did that stuff at Villa because he was like, I won stuff, and all these players at Villa didn't. And they're like, who are you? You're only a couple years. And
the kids don't give a shit who Steven Gerrard is.
The young kids don't care about that. And
no.
Like the older players that are our age, 30s, they're like, yeah, it's cool. Like we looked up to you, but like you can't talk shit like to us like that. And I have a feeling like that's where the discourse is, where like how you said with Arsene, he started at youth, so he dealing with kids. He kind of saw how like the middle school kids, teenagers act, and he can kind of use that when he starts getting older. So then you get to the U18s and that. So you're dealing it with each age group. And then you finally get to the pros where you have the opportunity of working with every age group. Because now we're seeing, like you said, Arsenal has a 17-year-old teenager coming onto the scene. But you're also still dealing with somebody that's 30 years old. It's like you have to find that balance. And I feel like at least Arteta, for all his whatever, he's able to do that as well too. Like he can manage properly. And I think that's where there needs to be I don't know what it's called. Like there needs to be something where English managers have to basically start at the bottom. You can't just go ahead and get a job. It's never going to happen. But we need more managers to do that. Like, hey, put your ego aside and like you need to learn the trade first, not just get the job.
Alex, I want to ask you because you're an American, unlike me. You can, as I'm sure people can tell from the accent. But Bill Belichick wasn't a professional NFL player. Vince Lombardi wasn't a professional NFL player. Like some of the greatest NFL coaches were not professional players, but they did, as Shay says, they did all start as middle school coaches or T-ball coaches or minor league coaches and learned how to work with the resources they had. Even though you can do some recruitment at the high school and the college level, a lot of the time you're kind of left with parts of your plan. That's what you've got. So you got to figure out a way of making it work. Do you think for those non-English coaches that go up through the youth levels, that's what they learn? They're learning that, like I've got a fantastic right side of this team, but the left side's not so great. So I have to figure out a way of playing that hides that weakness and emphasizes that strength. And it's something I think I can't remember where I saw it today or heard it. It was on Sirius XFM again though, where somebody was talking about how Slot for Liverpool orients the team towards the right defensively, so everybody slides over to take advantage of the fact that Salah and Trent Alexander-Arnold don't defend and don't defend well when they try. So it's compensated for. But Slot started off with youth teams in Holland as well, as most Dutch coaches have. So he understands that you don't have perfection. you have to figure out what to do with what you have. Do you think that kind of parachuting of English coaches into jobs that they're not ready for, they're missing that, and they really need to learn that one piece of just, here's what I got to do what I can with it?
Yeah, I think it's that, and even bigger, I think, is the mental resilience that comes with doing things like that and failing. So Gerard, right there, when you parachute into a Premier League squad, there isn't any room for error, especially now with how quick the hair trigger is for firing managers. There's no room for error. So you don't have time to make mistakes. Wayne Rooney found that out at Derby. You don't have time to make mistakes. You don't have time to learn on the job. And the only way to learn how to be a manager of a championship or Premier League football club is to be a manager of a championship Premier League football club. And so that to get to that point where you're ready to take those learnings, like it does require years and years of learning that. I think, the youth, it seems like that's how the setup is. Like in American football and baseball and stuff, you can be basketball, you can be an assistant coach and come up as a coordinator assistant coach. That same pipeline doesn't quite exist in world football, where you don't see a ton of like assistant managers go off and become high profile. It happens obviously, but that's not the celebrated pathway, right? Like I'm a defensive coordinator. My next step is head coach. It's a little different in world football, it sounds like, but I think that's the biggest skill set, is to be able to go and toil away on a youth team or a B team or a U21 or even just a lower league side in France or Italy and fail and not do well and have poor seasons and learn from that, both as a manager and as a person, to learn how to fail before you then again get dropped into the Villa job or the Chelsea job. And then all of a sudden you're failing for the first time in your life and you have no idea how to emotionally cope with this or like cope with your tactics. So I don't know. It sounds like the youth is the way they get that experience of failure and tinkering and working through it. Again, with English managers, they end their playing career, they go get their badges for a year or two, and then it's like, okay, I'm ready. Was it Cahill that tried to coach Salford City? Remember they were in League One, I think, or League Two, and then that didn't even go well, right? I think it was Cahill, but yeah, it's an entitlement. The kids nowadays don't even know who he is. Like you can't just walk into a room and command. It's just not how that works. I think it is a problem. It's a problem for English managers.
And I've got to have Glenn have the last word on this, because I think it's something we've talked about before about Thomas Frank, and it's the relationship he has with the players. And there's lots of footage of him, being incredibly positive with the players, and they clearly all hang on his every word, the Brentford players. But he also, like, I've coached high school boys, and you can't impress them. You have to get them on side to get them to listen to you, because the high school boys, they're stupid, and all high school boys are stupid. But if you get them on side, if you learn who they are, and if you develop a rapport with them, you can get them to run through brick walls. Do you think that plays a part for Thomas Frank, and is a lesson for other coaches, or English coaches rather? Learn who your players are. Don't say, here's what I did. Say, here's what I can help you do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Thomas Frank, embodies and exemplifies this trend of working, starting with younger teams, right? So we know that he's managed Denmark under 16s, 17s, 19s, like before he moved into kind of, full adult teams. But his first position was actually with the under 12s team in his hometown. And he kind of moved up. It was actually the under 8s, and then he moved up under 12s and moved up from there. So he literally started with elementary school. That's the kind of age group he was coaching, and then making those moves up, which is like that kind of the most kind of broadest possible scope you could have, right? Instead of being parachuted into a championship team based on player prestige or reputation, which we've just been talking about. But yeah, he's also a motivator, and I think that's the huge thing. He's like, he understands the game. He understands the nuances of the pressures that younger players have. I don't think it's a coincidence that so many B team players, there's a clear path from the B team to the Brentford first team. Doesn't matter that we're in the Premier League. We make sure that that's a conveyor belt that's continually working, because, in the B team, players have to see their former colleagues and players playing for the first team to have that motivation, right? To have that image. You've got to see your friends do it to make it possible. So the fact that he incubates this really positive environment that really does focus on younger players. And that speaks to our recruitment policy as well, right? We don't sign players really much who are over, usually 25. I mean, Ben Mee was a brilliant example of a different approach that actually paid dividends, which was, we're going up to the Premier League, we need an experienced player. He was brilliant. But most players, from recruitment to the B team to Thomas Frank's like own personal experience, it's always a focus on youth at the club. Even youth fans, right? I talked about, I think on this show a couple of weeks ago, about even younger fans, home and away fans, were capping the cost of watching Brentford in the Premier League. Like, I think Brentford is a club that really understands like the future of football, as both as players and fans, is with younger people, and that's huge. And yeah, and throughout the squad right now, as you said, Mackie, you know, he's got away with words. He knows how to motivate people. He knows how to pat people on the shoulder who have had a bad game. He also knows how to kind of shout out the unsung heroes, right? It's not always going to be the goal scorers that he praises post-match. Maybe it's the central midfielder who worked really hard, doesn't have any goals or assists to show for it, but was the engine. So yeah, I think he really does, you know, sum up this progressive coach that focuses in the broadest possible way on the nuances of football across age groups, as opposed to somebody who's just rocking up. They had a good career and they think, oh yeah, I was a good player, so therefore I will make a good manager. And, you know, tactically, personally, that's not the case. And we've seen that time and time again.
And that's exactly what happened to me, except I wasn't a good player.
When Glenn, to your point, that Thomas Frank also has the discernment to know, because there's no chance he hasn't gotten opportunities or whispers of opportunities elsewhere, but this discernment to say, I got a really good thing here at Brentford. We're building something, and to stick with that instead of saying like, "Ooh, shiny new job at a bigger club, I'm off." And so that's part of it too, is this discernment of like, this is where I need to be, and I'm going to stick it out.
Definitely. And you look at with Graham Potter going to Chelsea, that's a great example of taking the other road, and that didn't lead him to a particularly good place.
Nope.
I just want to point out, Alex, it's been great knowing you, but I have to kick you off the show now for bringing words like discernment into American. How dare you?
I'm trying to bring up the reading level here.
Yeah, no chance with me. And so let's go from the positive idea of bringing up youth teams to where we're going to probably see youth teams this weekend. We'll have a look at the FA Cup. We'll talk about the fixtures of our own teams, except Liverpool, because we'll talk about that tomorrow night. But the fixtures coming up, we have
any good ones?
Well, I couldn't tell you that, but Fulham are playing Watford in the cup at home. Alex, talk to us about that.
Big quasi-London derby. Huge one for the Fulham fans here. No, I think this is one you just hope that you get through. We'll see a lot of rotation, I'm sure. Maybe some young. Josh King has had a couple of Premier League cameos, a Premier League start recently. I imagine he'll play. And then hopefully can rotate a little bit and just come away with the win and move on, survive in advance. Hopefully get an easy Premier League, lower tier Premier League club next round.
Do you have a score prediction on that one at all?
Knowing Fulham, it'll be. Do they do replays this early in the FA Cup? Or they scrap those?
I think they scrapped them.
I think
all right, it'll be an awful 1-1 draw Fulham, and no, I'm kidding. It'll be 3-1 Fulham. I think. I don't see Watford bring up much.
Here's the prediction I want to get from you though, Alex. How many managers do you think Watford will go through from the first whistle to the last whistle?
God, over under 0.5. Oof,
I think one of us five might end up being one of the managers.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's injury fair. Time. Aston Villa against West Ham. Two topics of conversation tonight, Shay. How do you see this one going? Do you think? Maybe Lopetegui is going to try and save his job and he's going to play a full strength side, unless he already knows he's gone, in which case he probably won't care. But for Villa, do you think this is a game where, Emery might want to mix it up a little bit and not risk players?
That's what I would do, but it's just so tough because I'm pretty sure we have a Champions League game in the coming weeks, so we're literally at the tail end of our depth and injuries, so I don't even know who we have available.
The schedule is dumb, man.
Let me do a callback. Any one of us five might be paying for Aston Villa this weekend. I don't even
know. So yeah, it could be like back in 2020 when COVID, we had to literally play the kids against Liverpool. We were playing Louis Barry and literally 14 and 15-year-old kids. I don't think it'll be that bad, but he'll probably put a decent lineup. I could probably see some of the guys that are probably on the chopping block to say that are like getting looked at being bought probably start, and then he may throw a couple of these youth kids that were featured in the summer. And I hate to say don't worry about it, but because I want to win a trophy, obviously the FA Cup will be nice because I think we already got knocked out of the Carabao Cup. But I'm also worried about the Champions League since we're literally on the cusp of making it to the round of 16. So if they win, they win. They lose, they lose. I'm not gonna really feel too disappointed in it. But if they do scratch it out, I'm gonna go at least like a 1-0 scrappy win because how you said, like this could either be the final game for West Ham's coach and he goes all out, plays the full squad, or he just kind of like I said, just like I'm done. Let Graham Potter come and take over, and then whoever he puts in, they just kind of have to play for themselves.
Let's look down the list. Brentford and Plymouth Argyle, Glenn. That's a proper old school FA Cup. That's an old school FA Cup first round tie, let alone a third round tie.
Yeah.
But you know, it's thankfully for you guys home game. But do you think, given the maybe a little bit of a blip with the Arsenal game, do you think Frank thinks of the FA Cup as something he could possibly go far in? Or do you think he wants to make sure that the league position is secure first?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think from what I hear from behind the scenes, it's league first is the policy. And there's probably an assumption, an accurate one, that we're not going to win the FA Cup nor the League Cup. And that was underlined by our 11 we put out against Newcastle, I mentioned a little while ago. Yeah, I imagine there'll be mass rotation for this. Huge rotation be my guess. You know, we talked about former players been making poor managers, and Wayne Rooney's just been let go by Plymouth just a week or two ago, so he won't be coming to Brentford this weekend. But yeah, no, it should be a straightforward win. Plymouth are bottom of the championship. They've drawn their last 2 games since Rooney left, 2-2 and 0-0. Yeah, I think it'll be one of those kind of uncomfortable FA Cup games where you play a weakened team. They have just enough quality to get over the line. We did this in the League Cup against Colchester this season. Might have been someone else, but we played really poorly and just snuck through. Won't be much of a game, I don't think, but we're gonna have to give some younger players a go, and I'm fine with that. I want to respect the FA Cup, and I would say if we didn't have as many injuries to play as good a team as we can put out, but in the context of where our squad's at right now, yeah, we should have enough quality in the depth to beat a team in theory that's bottom of the championship without any kind of, arrogance there. There's a reason Rooney was let go. They will have he won't be in charge though. So, it might be a slightly different situation. If it was away from home at Home Park, I've been there a couple of times at Plymouth, beautiful ground, then yeah, I'd maybe be a little bit more concerned. But the fact is that the G-Tech, we've got a great record there this season. Yeah. We should have enough to get over the line.
The next one is Arsenal against Manchester United, away for Manchester United. And I bitterly know, Mr. Allen, how their away form can be very, very, very deceptive. Do you think, it's going to be a big game for United after that Liverpool result, and especially for Amram. He's going to want a proper landmark result that announces his tenure as the Manchester United manager. Beating Liverpool would have been that, but beating Arsenal in the Cup at Arsenal, that would be a great flag for him to plant for the Manchester United fans. But from the Arsenal perspective, is it the FA Cup is a trophy you want to win, isn't it? Especially now after the result today with Newcastle, which we didn't talk about, which we said, but now we can. Hey, look at that worked out. 2-0
magic of the cup, Alan.
The magic of the cup. But do you think that will factor into how Arteta sets the team up in the FA Cup this weekend? And thinking that Newcastle are no slouches at all, so the second leg at Newcastle is not a given for anybody. So is this a game where Arteta says, you know what, we have to put all the eggs in this basket as much as any other basket this season?
We're going for all 4 trophies, not just going for the like, hey, let's have a fun ride, down to Wembley at the semifinal and call it quits because we have the Premier League to win. No, it's every trophy is important here, and I think my biggest disappointment with today is the fact that, and why I came in so hot, is that there is this idea that these kids, and I say kids because a lot of them are still young. There's only a couple 30-year-olds on the team, but these kids need to actually get it together and win something. Like I'm not putting it against Arteta. I think Arteta is setting up the team as fine as he can, with the players that he's had, the injuries and the adversity that he's had. It's these players' mentality need to actually like get in, get things done, and losing 2-0 to Newcastle is bad. Thanks, Shay. But and I think also, you know, you got United at home, and the other problem is that we're wearing these white kits, which is it's an amazing initiative. It's a great charity. No room for red, which is like an anti-violence thing. That their initiative that they're trying to do in North London, which has been successful in getting you know, and helping out the community and everything. But they've just been so bad in those kits. Ever since we introduced those kits, I bet you if we had introduced those kits in the year that we won the FA Cup, we wouldn't have won the FA Cup. There probably wouldn't be an Arteta right now. But I mean, I think we've been. I really want to say that we're going to put in a result. We're going to have a professional result against United. United, you know, they're going to come in strong. They're happy that they got a draw. That's the level that they're at right now. That they got a draw and they're ecstatic. Now they want to plant their flag at Emirates. I hope and pray that does not happen. There is also the idea that there is a bigger fixture to look forward to on Wednesday next week, and that is the North London derby. And you know, hopefully Tamworth does their job and eliminates Tottenham. And in the FA Cup, that'd be hilarious, but that's not going to happen. But no, I think these players need to, whatever squad that Arteta puts out, it's going to be a tough decision for him because, you know, like I said, the following Wednesday is the North London derby. So we'll see. I'm still going to say 2-0, hopefully.
That just nicely brings me on to the Tonali picks because, Alan, I happen to believe that Tamworth can beat Tottenham in the FA Cup. I'm not even joking about that. I think Spurs are so mercurial with their performances that it's easily conceivable that they could lose away to Tamworth in the FA Cup. So I'm going to make that, just to get us going for our last section tonight. Tamworth to beat Spurs in the FA Cup is my Tonali pick, but I'll scroll up and down and we'll just look at the Premier League games because that's where the upsets usually happen. Shay, do you see anything there? Everton, Petersburg, Villa, West Ham we talked about, Leicester QPR, Liverpool, Accrington, Stanley. That's we've got their number.
Proper local derby, huh?
Well, they're a team that's more famous for being in a milk commercial in the 80s in England. Accrington, Stanley, who are they? Exactly.
I think mine, honestly, probably would be the Everton one, just because with Everton playing, I mean, they have a chance to, you know, get a win and actually do well, but that just gives all the bulletin material to Wickham, so they're going to come out there and just probably win 1-0. To be honest with you, know, Sean Dyche is going to still sit back against a team that's probably, I'm not sure where they're at currently, but he will still sit there and sit back, and they're gonna have one random player that makes his name. Like every year happens, there's always a person from one of these teams that just shows up, and it's gonna be them. I'm going 1-0.
That's a Thursday game as well, so that might throw like the rotation, the training rotations, in spanner in those particular works. Glenn, do you see any Tonali's picks there at all in the FA Cup?
West Brom getting a good result at Bournemouth. I could see West Brom getting a win there. They're doing all right in the Championship, and if Bournemouth have a great starting 11, and they've been one of the surprise packages of the league this season. They've been so good, but I reckon a bit of rotation from them might not have the same quality we're used to, you know, seeing week in, week out. So I'm going to say West Brom to get a win at Bournemouth.
And Alex.
Yeah, I've got two. One that wasn't even an upset is at the bottom with Swansea taking on Southampton. I'm not even sure that's an upset. But I think
it's not an upset. That's
no, but a real one was further up. I just lost it. Norwich. I think Norwich will be up for Brighton. I think Brighton are in that similar spot where they're kind of in like we need to focus on the league here and make it back to Europe. but also some rotation. So they're in one of that tricky spots with a club that's historically in the last decade been in that yo-yo spot. So they have good players, but yeah, I think Brighton they might be in trouble.
And Maka, one I missed. Also, so Bristol City home to Wolves, really decent one there. Bristol City have won a couple of home games in a row, and Wolves won't have Matthias Cunha for this game either. It'll be the second game of his ban. So if I was going to have a home fixture, I like the look of Bristol City.
I mean that's the great thing about FA Cup third round weekend. There's a lot of cup sets, as we used to call them, a lot of Tonali's picks there. But that's the magic of the cup. That's why they should never fiddle around with that competition. It is probably the best club cup competition in the world. That's a straight up knockout. Well,
where's my pick?
Oh, did you not get a pick on?
No,
that's because you were frozen. I thought you left again. Let me get those. Let me get those things back up for you. There we go. Just for you.
Memory, Alan.
Yeah.
Just for you. There
Thank
you go.
you. I'm gonna go ahead with a massive derby that's
I'm going to go
ahead with a massive derby that's going on in Manchester. I'm going to pick the class of '92.
Yeah,
Nicky Butt, Ryan Giggs, Gary Neville, Phil Neville.
I did think about that one.
Salford City is going to take it to Manchester City.
I did think about that one.
And they're still involved in that club, aren't they? That's not good.
Yeah, I had to look that up before I said that. It looks
that would be something, wouldn't it? That would be a proper kick in the teeth for Manchester City fan. Notice they didn't go for the plural there.
Yes.
If they Manchester City fan, all the United fans will basically start buying Salford City.
Salford City, yeah.
They will.
Money to them. Like, hey, this is actually your real.
I'll
team.
buy a Salford City shirt.
I will. I'll buy a Tamworth kit if they pull it off.
Same.
I'm fairly confident, and I'm only fairly confident because my cousin's a sports supporter and he thinks they're gonna lose.
If they lose, is that the end for?
Yeah, it would have to be, wouldn't it? That would have to be the end for Big Ange. Then at that point, maybe Graham Parker will have his job as well. We'll just never know with that. But first of all, we've gone like 90 minutes tonight. It hasn't even felt like 90 minutes. So thank you, gentlemen, for that. It's fantastic as always, and it was good that we got Alan eventually into the 21st century on board there.
Standing up too,
standing up as well. Yeah, that's probably what
I was going to take advantage of it. That's why I did.
Your picture is frozen there for momentarily, like you were in some sort of weird porn movie. Still, fantastic conversation as always. But if you are watching us and you're a fan of this show and this American Scouser content, follow us on the YouTube and on the Facebook and Instagram and X formerly known as Twitter and Mastodon and Blue, whatever you call it, and also AARP, the WWF and the WWE as well. All of them. Follow us on all.
I will not accept AEW erasure on this show. As well.
No, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. But I won't mention TNA because you get enough TNA when I'm on screen and I'm sitting down. But gentlemen, thank you for that. Enjoy your weekends and enjoy your games for the FA Cup. I love an FA Cup. I think it's just a fantastic competition. When your team isn't losing to Accrington Stanley or something like that. But let's all fingers crossed for Tamworth. That's all I'm saying. Let's all fingers crossed for Tamworth. But everybody else, join us tomorrow morning for the morning coffee and then Thursday for the Thursday show, as always, for the technological breakdowns and the Darwin Núñez hatred. But peace out to everybody. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the FA Cup. Here is the Funky Tunes. Have a good one.
Yay.